We can talk this about, leadership, whether they will do this, third time lucky, but bottom line, a lot of people want to buy Nike products and they don't want to do the same with Adidas.
I think that's absolutely right. Now, the fact is, this is a growth industry. The fact, people's interest in health and fitness is near peak levels. I mean, everybody's really fascinated, so these products should be working. And perhaps that's why Adidas can offer 5 to 7% type sales growth, but still disappoint people because the industry is doing so well. The problem, I think, is Nike particularly has made life very difficult. Bigger and bigger as the business gets, it spends more money on marketing, spends more money on technology to make us feel its products are superior. And that's increasingly making people like Adidas, Puma, subscale. I mean, they just can't seem to keep up.
But Rahul, what do people want? Because it's kind of health/fashion.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that wear trainers or sneakers, if you're in the US watching us, actually out every day because it's suddenly become cool. So if you were Adidas, what would you focus on? Better performance, better marketing, better brand awareness, and looking better as well?
I think, unfortunately, it's a combination of all those things, and the problem Adidas have is they're underinvested on every one of these things over the last few years compared to Nike. So Nike's gone, you think about the newest sneaker, I mean, who's willing to pay up how much more for, in terms of pricey sneakers? Nike's won that race. You think about endorsements, Nike's winning that race by paying them much more than typically Adidas or Puma can actually afford to pay, unfortunately. And therefore, catching up on all these things is difficult. So what does that mean? You promise these targets, but your operating margin target keeps coming down. Nike's running at almost 13–14% operating margins. Adidas is struggling to get to 7. I mean, that's just, and this is, it's used to be a 10% margin target not that long ago, and it just tells you what's happened. Even in a growth business, some people are getting left behind.
So what would you do? If you're in charge of Adidas, you get a new design team, or do you spend more on marketing?
I think you have to get a new... Well, in terms of the design team, unfortunately, the product has, to some extent, not been bad. I mean, I think incrementally some of the newer innovation actually sounds very interesting. The problem is you need to do more on marketing. You need to do much more about awareness for your product. Spend more, unfortunately, and that may well mean lower margins, I think.
Spend more on what? Is this a marketing campaign, or is it actually sponsoring things? I mean, it does seem that actually Nike is not in the anywhere, but you associate, I guess, rightly or wrongly, but winning or being competitive with Nike because of their slogan, but you also seem to have them in very crucial sporting events.
I think it's the visibility. I mean, it's fascinating that of late, this year now, Nike is bigger than Adidas in Europe for the first time in their home market. And therefore, clearly, Nike's come from behind with the right kind of sponsorships in soccer and running, in terms of actually overtaking Adidas at their own game. This used to be Adidas's heritage. And unfortunately, they've got left behind. So I think it is behind the right kind of spokespeople for your brand. Unfortunately, that's going to cost money. More visibility for the brand, that's going to cost money. And more visibility in the right places. So they're talking about cities, the prime cities, that's right. But they're almost a decade too late in terms of doing that.
And is there a danger that they're trying to copy Nike? I mean, is there a niche that actually Nike doesn't have where Adidas could fit very nicely in? Is it, I mean, you're talking about cities, is it more of an urban street style that they have to go after?
The problem is, and they have the sub-brands to do that. That's what Reebok used to be many years ago. But again, it's so underinvested that you don't even see Reebok in half the European store shelves anymore. So, there's a problem with availability of these brands as well. So really, I think we're going back and saying this was a mistake. Problem is Nike's covered so many of these flanks that you literally have to consider yourself as a sort of sister or stepson, so to speak.
Well, let me ask you this. Do they have the cash to spend? If they're overinvested, do they have the cash? Do they have to raise capital?
I think you're a little bit away from that stage where they actually, the balance sheet itself looks okay. The problem is if you look a few years out, you've got a competitor that's kind of generating twice as much cash as you, spending twice as much as you. From that point of view, unfortunately, Adidas does look undercapitalized. I mean, I think eventually, as the margin keeps coming down, cash flow becomes difficult. And these are slightly longer-term problems, maybe not today's problems, but you do have to wonder. You've got a competitor who's twice your size, who's actually got twice the margins, and therefore almost 4 times the cash flow.
Yeah, Rahul, thank you so much for that. Rahul Sharma, their founder and managing director at Neev Capital.